Welcome into No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. I am your host, Joe Zolo. I got Josh here this week, no Ryan, but we're replacing him with two even better people. Two is better than one. Sorry, Ryan, if you're listening to this on your little vacation. But we have Kevin and Christian here. It is going to be an awesome show. They're from the Devy Royale and Football Guys. It is the wide receiver class, and let me tell you, there is some discrepancy after the top three. It gets into, some names might be in Kevin's top 10 where they're not in Christian's and vice versa. It's going to be very interesting. We're going to talk about where they're going to land, how we see these prospects. Let's get into it. Welcome into No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. I'm your host, Joe Zolo. As always, Joshua Hudson, and replacing Mr. Weiss, Kevin and Christian. How are you, gentlemen?
Good.
Doing very well.
That was enthusiastic. Let me tell you guys.
So for those that didn't know, we are not live this week. Kevin and Christian had to pre-record, so this is Easter morning, and I believe, Kevin, are you on the West Coast?
I am, yes.
Christian, are you on the West Coast too?
No.
Okay.
No.
So Kevin's lackadaisical yes is 8 a.m. And Christian, where are you?
I'm in Eastern time, so my lackadaisical is just Sunday morning.
That's fair. That's fair.
Right.
I mean, hey, normally this time I'm getting groceries, but now we're here to talk about the rookie wide receiver class, which, as you guys described in pre-show, is So I'm very excited to see who people will be overdrafting and which guys will, end up being duds in the NFL. So this is very fun. Talk quarterbacks with Christy Freud 2 weeks ago, running backs last week with Jagger May, and wide receivers this week with the two gentlemen beneath me. All right. Top five. There's not a crazy amount of discrepancy in the top five, so we won't spend too much time there. The top three, one's the same. I haven't heard anybody say Jaxon Smith-Njigba is not their number one in this class, and I don't think it's pretty close comparative to your guys 2 and 3, Kevin's being Addison, Johnson, Christian's being vice versa, Johnston, Addison. So have you guys seen any discrepancy in JSN not being number one for pretty much everybody in this class?
No, I mean, I haven't seen it. I don't know. There was some before he tested. So like before kind of the testing that you saw, especially like the 3-cone drill and the shuttle drill and all that. And then he came out and did his 40. So you saw that. But before that, yeah, there was some. I saw some Quentin Johnson, wide receiver 1 stuff, and it was there. But as soon as JSN tested, you're like, oh, okay, like he's probably the safest guy based on his testing numbers, what he looks like. And so I think that's where that comes from. Now, if you're smart like me, I had him as wide receiver 1 the whole time. But like if you're like Christian, you may have had some discrepancies there. But for the most part,
just steamrolling right over that one.
Fuck you, Christian.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. I gotta give him some shit. But no, I think with the testing, he's there. I think, but I mean, there are still question marks, and there's some landing spots out there. I think are landmines for JSN too from a fantasy output. But I think overall, yeah, you have to put him there just based on because he's the safest guy of this class, which this class has a ton of landmines.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for a while I had Quentin Johnson as my wide receiver 1, and I actually think they're in the same tier in terms of the upside that Quentin Johnson could reach. I think that does supersede what Jaxon Smith-Njigba can be. On the other side of things, like Kevin mentioned, Jaxon is very clearly the safest wide receiver, but also for fantasy football provides the most upside in terms of he's going to be a high target, high reception type of guy, and those guys score fantasy points. So, after I got confirmation that he was a great borderline elite athlete, that's when I bumped him back into number 1.
And Ohio State's track record of receivers in recent years has been probably the best from transitioning to college football to the NFL. LSU probably being 2 right there, but McLaurin, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson just in their rookie years showed a lot.
Yeah, and it feels like the best of them is coming out next year.
Well, when your name is attached to Marvin Harrison, yeah, I would say that's a fairly decent pedigree right there. It is interesting though. Ohio State very good at producing their receivers. Okay, you get to 4. Josh Downs the exact same from UNC. 5 is where it gets very different because Kevin, the guy you have at 5 is at Christian's 8, and then Christian, your 5 is Kevin's 6. So there's not too much discrepancy. But Kevin, you have Zay Flowers at 5 from BC. Christian, you have Marvin Mims from Oklahoma. Obviously, one college football program much better than the other, to say the least. So Kevin, because when people were touting Zay Flowers, me being from the New England area, knowing how piss poor BC's football program is, I was shocked that people had Zay Flowers this high because I'm like, there's no way he even showed anything in college. His quarterback, there's no way they were even getting the ball to him. So what do you see in Zay Flowers to put him at 5? And then Christian, I'll bounce it to you. And why do you have him at 8? So Kevin, go ahead with you.
Well, to be fair, there's some people out there have him as wide receiver 2. So I feel like this is a pretty normal spot for him. I've been a Zay guy for like 3 years, and Christian can attest to that. Like I've probably been on him more, earlier than most, just because I thought he played pretty well in terms of like what he can do. I think he's versatile. I do think that he can kind of go inside out, good after the catch ability. So like if he lands on a team where he's a slot guy and he can kind of immediately become that guy that gets targets, if he's got some guys like Alpha on the outside, I think that he would fit well with that. I do think that he plays the ball well downfield too. And to your concern about the quarterback play, yeah, BC doesn't have a great quarterback, even though that quarterback Jerkovich was talked about as being quarterback 1 this class. Christian remembers those takes last year. You have Zay, who produced very well. 1,000 yards this last year, 12 touchdowns, good yards per reception. I thought he elevated the game. A really good vertical scheme guy. So for me, Zay is at 5 because I feel like after 3, you're splitting hairs based on what your rankings and what you see on the tape and where your value's at. So Zay's a guy that I've been around pretty high on for a while. So I'll put him there. And if he does get first round draft capital buzz, which if he gets in that first round, like people are out there talking, I think he has to be in your top 5.
Christian?
Yeah. So with me, Zay definitely improved this year, and I think that was very apparent. I had a lot of questions about his actual route running because they were asking him to run a lot of routes, and I didn't feel like he had the technique that would allow him to get open at the NFL level. I do think that got better this year. On the other side of things, like I see mostly a dynamic yards after the catch player that probably, is best as a number 2, right? And I think he's not that natural slot receiver that can be like Jaxon Smith-Njigba and command a ton of targets and start to work in a ton of receptions. But I think that there is a chance that he goes top 20. There have been some rumblings that he could be wide receiver 1 off the board. And then we're going to get a little crazy with the Zay Flowers takes. And, I might bump him just a slight bit if he does go top 20. There have been rumors that the Patriots will take him as the number 1 receiver off the board, even ahead of Jaxon Smith-Njigba. So, but overall, I think he's a good player. I think that he can impact an offense. I just don't see that crazy upside that maybe some of these other guys that I have ahead of him do.
I got a quick question that I want to jump in with this because just kind of looking at this wide receiver class as a whole, and, Christian, Kevin, both of you guys have kind of hit on this about how, really after the top 3, it's kind of a crapshoot. One thing I've seen with this class is there's a lot of guys that don't profile, like really just like measurable wise, as like a prototypical wide receiver 1. With the league becoming so much more pass heavy, do we think that these wide receivers are just kind of getting pushed up the draft board more so out of necessity instead of actual skill? Christian, I'll start with you.
Yeah, and I keep mentioning, the last few years we've been really spoiled with the wide receiver position in terms of rookie output and rookie draft capital. And this year, I think we're going to swing in the other way. Some of these guys Zay Flowers might be that one guy that does get that high draft capital. Jaxon Smith-Njigba too. But even then, there are teams that have questions about him. And while the NFL they have been trending towards this pass heavy attack, we're starting to see things swing a little bit. We're not quite there yet, but everything is cyclical. And as teams build out these base nickel defenses, we're going to get back into that heavy rushing attack. And, some of the things that made the Eagles successful last year. And so I think this is going to be the first year where the draft capital kind of shows that. I think maybe a few of these guys could go top 50, but I also think that we're going to see a lot less wide receivers taken on the top 100 simply because teams have been doing that for the last few years. They kind of already have their guys. Sure, there are a lot of wide receiver needy teams in theory, but they're very role specific. And so that's a really great question, though, because I think that we are on one of those tipping points where we might not see that as much outside of Marvin Harrison Jr., like you mentioned, next year. But I think we might be swinging back in the other direction.
Kevin.
Yeah. No, I mean, he hit on the head there. And if you've done mocks, so we've done a few mocks over at Football Guys and trying to do it, it's hard to get these wide receivers in the first round early, especially because the edge, the interior defensive line, when you look at the offensive line as well. So I think to his point, you're going to see these guys dip a little bit. Like it's even hard with JSN sometimes. Like JSN can go anywhere from 11 to 22, like because of just when a team's on the clock and how they're building their roster. They're like, hey, maybe this wide receiver that he's not very high on our board. Like, why are we going to plug and play this kid when we don't know necessarily if we're going to be there yet as a team? Because there's a lot of transitional teams right now in the NFL. Like they're in weird spots, Tennessee, Tampa. Like there's a lot of guys, like a lot of teams out there, and I can name up more that are really in some weird spots where a wide receiver is not the biggest need for them. And maybe they are going to go that 12 personnel. Hey, we're going to line up and we're just going to shove it down your throats, especially with the running back position the way it is this year. Like I think we're going to see that. But the wide receiver, the reason why I struggle with this wide receiver team, I think that they're this class is that I think they're okay. But I have a hard time from a fantasy perspective seeing a lot of stars and guys that you can consistently plug into your lineup every week, especially this first year. But guys like Zay and these guys, you're looking at what? 3 catches, 88 yards, and a touchdown is probably like, oh, yeah, he did that for me on my bench. That's cool. Like, damn it, Zay. Like, and I think that's where you're getting into with these guys is that I don't feel a lot of confidence with these guys. Even when you go in even further down, you're like, oh, man, like, where is this confidence at? And I saw somebody, they talking about that second and third round where the wide receivers are kind of going. And I still think the running backs are valuable. Like I still think the way the NFL is trending, you got to get ahead of that trend. And I'd be much more comfortable in a rookie draft taking shots on those running backs. The way the NFL is going, once I know the draft capital, even in the 4th round draft capital for running backs. And I think they have more value right now because there's a trend right now in Dynasty. Everybody's going away from wide receiver. Running back. Everybody hates running back. No one wants to take a running back in a startup. No one wants that. So at some point, the running backs are going to become more valuable. And I think maybe we're going to be talking about running backs. Oh my God, running backs are back. Like that's the new in lingo thing next year. So get ahead of it this year in your rookie drafts and go get some running backs and value. Because I think there's just a lot of question marks about wide receivers. Like there's just a ton of question marks there. And to your point, yeah, I do think that teams are looking at this class saying we have guys like this. We have Darnell Mooney. We can go get Brandon Cooks instead of that's why Cowboys went and got Brandon Cooks. I guarantee it because I see like people mocking like Josh Downs and Flowers to those guys. The Cowboys don't draft small wide receivers. They never have. They don't want those type of wide receivers. And I think a lot of teams are going to go are trending that route too. And that's all this draft class has.
So what you're saying is Arthur Smith profit because he's ground and pound approach for the Falcons. All right, Bijan Robinson, top 10 to Atlanta confirmed.
Maybe.
Cool, thanks.
Maybe.
Take it away,
I hope
Joe.
so. I hope
it's not going to happen, but you can keep saying that. Josh, what would you say is your prototypical NFL wide receiver size? I just want to.
I mean, to me, it's like 6'2" and up, and at least 210. I feel like is kind of that like prototypical like alpha wide receiver 1 size.
So it's just
historically speaking, anyway.
I know, and I think it's changing because I wanted to know because I went through it. I'm like, he's definitely going to say at least 6'2". There's 2 guys that were top 10 receivers last year that are over 6'2", and they were 9 and 10. Granted, if Cooper Kupp was healthy the entire year, he probably would have been number 1, if not 2 or 3. Yeah,
you're also seeing a lot more of these like slot wide receivers that are being featured in offenses that wasn't the case 10 plus years ago. So.
And that's what I kind of want to get. Now I'm not saying guys like Zay Flowers and who's another shorty in here, Josh Downs are Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but if you look at sizing, Justin Jefferson 6'1", 195. Jaxon Smith-Njigba, exact same measurables, like exact same measurables. So if you're looking at it from that, that's the alpha in the NFL. JSN makes sense at 1. Tyreek Hill, 5'10". Devontae Adams, 6'1". Granted, he's heavier at 215. A.J. Brown, even heavier at 226, but the same height. Diggs, 6 feet tall. Waddle, 5'10". Jamar Chase, 6 feet. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 6 feet. These are the top 10 receivers according to NFL.com from last year. They're not Quentin Johnson's height. Like, there's no...
And even he measured smaller at the combine than what he was reported at TCU.
And that always happens. That's just bullshit.
But I mean, he went from like 6'4", 215 to like 6'2". Like that's a big swing.
Oh, that's a jump. So what there's no more like, wasn't Randy Moss 6'3"? Or am I making
like 6'4"?
Yeah, okay.
Actually, yeah. I was gonna hit you with some hard hitting research that hasn't dropped. That's the article that I was working on that I was telling you before we started recording, Josh.
Nice.
So 10 years ago, 15 plus years ago, actually, 2006 to 2010, the average top 12 wide receiver was 6'1" and change, about 210, 209. The average wide receiver, top 12 wide receiver over the last 5 years has been 6 foot and 204. So while it's not a huge discrepancy, you see that trend down. And of course there are outliers that bring that stuff down, but you are seeing it even in like big chunks of data. Wide receivers are getting smaller. So,
and corners in this class are bigger. So I'm curious to see how that's going to play out, because there's a lot of these top corners that are 6 feet and up. I think Christian Gonzalez from Oregon's like 6'2".
Yeah,
big wingspan too. So
it's reversing. They're putting the tall guys at corner and the short guys at receiver.
Right.
But I mean, you have
like, I need you to cover these 6'5" guys. Oh shit! Wait, they don't exist anymore.
Well,
Fuck.
no, you're 6'2" and 6'3", and they realize, oh shit, you can't catch the football, so you play defensive back. That's how you become a DB. But I mean, Tariq Woolen, I'm pretty sure is what, 6 feet, 6'1", runs like a 4.3. He's unbelievable. But yeah, that's a very minority. There's not a lot of 6'1" guys running 4.3s at the corner position. So it's an interesting switch. I wanted to hear, Josh, what your thought on a prototypical receiver is, and then Christian backing up with research is great. I didn't even do my fucking research. I opened an article from NFL.com 10 minutes ago. This is great. All right. I love when smart people who do the research confirm my beliefs and what I think. I love that. That's awesome. Okay. 6 through 10. A little bit of discrepancy. 9 and 10 are the exact same. 9 is Xavier Hutchinson from Iowa State. A.T. Perry at 10 from Wake Forest. You both agree on that. Christian already aforementioned Zay Flowers at 8. Kevin Marvin Mims at 6 for you. This is interesting. You both have different Tennessee receivers. Kevin, you have Jalin Hyatt at 7. Christian, you have Cedric Tillman at 6. And you both have Rashee Rice from... Well, Kevin has him from SUM, and Christian has him from SMU.
I wrote that. I put it backwards.
And,
I was trying to help you because I know you're not a college kid, and never mind.
Yeah, no, you could have given me a million guesses. I had no idea Rashee Rice would have played football, but he played at SMU, so that's obviously a god tier receiver right there.
Yep.
Listen, Emmanuel Sanders.
Joe loves him some SMU receivers.
Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley, Cortland Sutton. With Trent Taylor, absolutely.
And then the god James Prochet.
He needs a chance. The man needs a chance in a quarterback that can throw to him. Okay.
I agree.
I will start with the Tennessee receivers here, because I feel like there was a lot more hype around Jalin Hyatt earlier on, and then I feel like it's died down. And Christian, you didn't have him in there, and then Kevin, you don't have Cedric Tillman. So I will start with the Christian side of things of why you have Tillman there, and Kevin, why you don't, and then flip that to why you have Hyatt in there, and Christian, why you don't.
Yeah, so Cedric Tillman, to me, there are a lot of analytics profiles that you say, but the film's really good. That's Tillman. He took 4 years to be productive at Tennessee. Some of that was injury related. Some of that was just not getting on the field. And then we really only saw the 1 year of production. But when you turn on the film, you see a big guy, and we talk about that prototypical size. When you're looking for, roles to fit, I think teams are trying to build out a basketball team, right? there aren't too many Cedric Tillmans in this class. And so I think that will bump him up. I see a guy that can pluck the ball out of the air. I see an explosive route runner. I see a guy that can start and stop at a pretty elite level. And the testing numbers actually back that up. I expected him to test okay. And he tested in, some pretty high percentiles in terms of what his size speed combo is and things like that. But I also see a guy that can threaten all three levels of the field. I don't think he's a burner, but I do think that he can win downfield because of that size and the ability to go up and get the ball. We'll stay here. I've got thoughts on Jalin Hyatt, but Kevin, why do you hate Cedric Tillman, man?
Okay, so I don't hate Cedric Tillman.
Just don't like him as much as others. That's okay.
Yeah, I think the problem with me,
put positive spins on things.
Right.
I mean, I think the thing and I hate to do this because Christian knows I'm not an analytics guy, but like his contested catch rate was 72% in his junior year, the year that he had like a legit 1,000 yards. I don't know if he can separate. Like, I just don't know if he's going to be able to really separate at the NFL level. And really the limited kind of production window scares me a little bit. He had one good year in 5, and he's an older prospect. And I do think that he fits one thing really well. Like, he's going to be on the outside. And like Christian talked about, that is the one thing that teams are going to like. Okay, maybe we can get this guy 6'3", 213, put him on the outside. And this is his role. So I do agree with that sentiment. So that's fine. I just think for me, when I'm looking at these guys and doing my rankings, a lot of red flags pop up, right? Late production window, not really a burner. He's okay. I don't know about the separation. Overall, what's his fit? Like, we comped him to Terrace Marshall in our rookie guide. That was our comp for him. Now, some people got burned on Terrace Marshall. And we know that, but to me, when I'm putting the other guys in here, the red flags just pop up to me, and that's why Tillman's not there. I'd rather have A.T. Perry because I think A.T. Perry produced at a higher level, a consistent level, and is a better athlete in my opinion.
All right.
Sure.
Flip it to Jalin Hyatt, who is a speedster.
Yeah.
Now, I want to preface this, Christian. This is a non-Jalin Hyatt slander podcast.
Because
right.
I work with
Josh
his mom.
Works with his mom.
So
okay. All right. Well, let me
Jalin
adjust
Hyatt
the rankings.
is so bad at football.
Oh no.
He had to play for Tennessee and not any other team. No, okay, go ahead.
I've been one of the lower people on Jalin Hyatt for a long time. When I watched his film, he was starting to get that crazy first round hype because the production is there. He was a very productive player this last year. However, when you turn the film on, a lot of it is, hey, he's fast and we blew coverage on defense. So that's how Jalin Hyatt just beat us. Even against Alabama, there were blown coverages, and a lot of people highlight that Alabama game because it was a really good game for him. But overall, when you start to look at his body of work, he's a guy that straight line, he is a great athlete. When he has to turn or stop and start, I don't think it's there. I don't think his route tree is refined. I think he's very raw in those aspects. And so when I start to rank a speed guy that already would be an outlier in terms of fantasy production, because fast guys, Tyreek Hill's kind of one of those exceptions. Jalen Waddle's kind of up there. But in terms of guys that are supposedly running sub 4.4, there aren't too many guys that get produced for fantasy. Then you combine the fact that he's kind of a one-trick pony, and I think he's going to be more impactful to an NFL team in that he's going to take the top off. He's going to threaten the third level, but that doesn't always lead to, targets and fantasy points. They're Deshaun Jacksons of the world. Maybe that's what he ends up being, and I truly hope so. But I just don't see a guy that I'd be willing to bet on, especially with the draft capital that he's about to get and his price point when you're looking at rookies in dynasty drafts and things like that.
Kevin?
Yeah, so I'll say, as a whole, we've been pretty low on Hyatt as a group, on our show and everything. And I have him at 7 because of that elite skill of speed. And because I do think he's going to have built-in draft capital. When you look at him here, if he gets that late first or early second, and you're like, hey, Hyatt can be that guy. Now, consistently, you are, like Christian talked about, you are going to get a game where he has 2 catches, 98 yards, and a touchdown, and then he has no targets the next game or something like that. There's going to be some weird inconsistencies in his profile, but I don't think his value is I don't think his ADP is that high. I've seen him consistently go in the 3rd round right now. So prior to the NFL draft, if I'm looking at that, if I'm going to take a shot on some dude in the 3rd round of rookie drafts, because there are people out there, crazy degenerates that draft before that. If you can get Hyatt in the 3rd round, I don't think that's necessarily like a bad value play. Like you're going to grab him and a guy that's going around there. I'll take him over like, some of these other guys that are going in that category. So like what's built into my rankings is kind of like, all right, he's got that speed. And he plays well downfield. Like he does a pretty good job of, locating the ball. He's got good awareness and where he's at. Like I think for him, he's got to get a spot though. He's got landing spot. We use this term landing spot dependent a lot, which I think is kind of bullshit sometimes. Like when I see it on like, social media, but I do think for him, like he's got to get a spot where he has that vertical passing scheme with a really, really good, strong run game. Like get him something where he can stretch the field vertically and defenses have to really key in the box and try to stop their rushing attack. And then you can have elite weapons. Like, and there is some all 22 tape. When you go watch some of his all 22 tape, and this is where I always go back, and me and Christian will argue with this, there's some stuff on his route running that's there. I don't know if it's as refined as it needs to be, but like there's moments where you're like, oh, Hyatt, he's got a little bit of wiggle. Like he created a little bit of separation there when he got pressed a little bit. The problem is he didn't face it a lot. He didn't get to face a lot of press coverage when you're looking at the PFF stats and everything there. So there's red flags in his profile as well. But for me, it's like, okay, I'm going to bet on speed in there. And we all know, we've been playing fantasy a long time. Dudes will love Hyatt. So if you draft him, you're going to be able to use him as trade pieces as well. Like there's always going to be a dude out there who believes Will Fuller.
I'll be the sucker.
Back.
It's okay.
Yeah, there's always that guy, right? There's always that dude in your leagues that think, hey, because we comped him Will Fuller. Hey, Fuller is that guy. Oh, all he needs is that breakout. He's going to do this. Hyatt's the same way, in my opinion. Like, hey, oh yeah, he has that talent. He has that. He just needs someone to use him. Like you're going to be able to like get this kid, and then you can use those elite skills and transition them. I think for at least 2 years in your dynasty league. So this is a tough area, but that's why I have Hyatt there. But again, I'm not like a truther at all. Like I am not one of those guys that's like slamming the table for Hyatt. Like I've been very, hey, let's just, let's relax with Hyatt. Like when he was going top 5 or something had the 3 and stuff like that. I do want to say though, he had a good combine. It wasn't bad. He had 4.40 is fine. I think people just brought him up and thought he was going to run like a 4.29 in that area. And that's just the same thing they did with Treylon Burks last year. So like he did fine. 40-inch vertical. Are you kidding me? Keyshawn Butte had a 29-inch vertical, right? Like, so he did have a legitimate like 40 out there, 9.46 on the relative athletic score. Like you have to like that. And I think you're just betting on that upside from that athletic profile.
I love the Will Fuller comp, because I've always said that Hyatt is basically Will Fuller with hands. Like the one thing that I love about Jalin Hyatt's game, he's a slot receiver, but he doesn't catch with his body. He actually like puts his hands out and he catches the football. And that's one of his traits that I love the most. I do think that he's probably going to be a better NFL wide receiver than a fantasy wide receiver. So Kevin, you bringing up that he has that sort of like 2-year like value window from a fantasy perspective in Dynasty, I think that's probably the most accurate statement. I love that.
So a couple things, because we brought up bad route running, and I know nothing about his route running, but there was a comparison like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and how they're fast, but they're good route runners. There's a difference between speed and quickness, people. For those that are new listening or that may hear people bring up speed and quickness, speed is Usain Bolt. Quickness is watching Jalen Waddle absolutely murder defensive backs in the slot. That is like quickness is in and out of cuts, super fast. LaShawn McCoy, Barry Sanders. Straight line speed is I'm Derrick Henry and I'm 6'5", 350 pounds, and you're not going to tackle me because I run a 4.4. It's just straight line speed. So if he can work on some of that, I'm hearing.
And I've seen some of the highlight tapes with him training out in Arizona. He's got some quickness in the short area, and the lack of press coverage. I mean, he's a slot guy. Nobody presses in the slot.
Josh, you got his mom.
You're going to lose.
Oh, Josh, dude, she shows me video highlights all the time. Yeah. I'm just like, okay, I'm thinking this.
On the phone. Right. There you go. Look at this. Look at my baby. Look at my baby out here crushing it.
Now,
trust me, I'm not going to be the guy that tweets, hey, my sources say that. No, that's not me. Sorry.
So, Kevin, you brought up landing spot, and this is one that I saw in a mock draft the other day. CBS has since updated it. But if he lands in Kansas City, okay, realistically, where would you take him? And do you think he would jump into the first round because people would get so excited that he's in Kansas City?
Well, they did it last year with Sky Moore, right?
Exactly, and that's why I asked that
3
question.
3 years ago with Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire would run in our league. So,
but I wouldn't draft him there. Like if he
Yeah.
was going late first, I just wouldn't draft him there. Like, and I would just let someone else take him. And then, so that's really what it comes down to value play. Like, and that's the thing too about these class. Like, you shouldn't hate a player or love a player right now. Like you have your rankings and you have your value. And then when you get that draft capital, like it goes to Chiefs. Now, I would like that fit. But again, then I'm looking at it like, dude, that's a reach based on my rankings where I want him there. And that's just a value thing. So like dynasty shouldn't be about like loving or hating guy. And I think that's one mistake we make a lot. A lot of guys do, like, oh, I love this dude, especially if you're a college guy like us. Like we watch these guys, so like, yeah, we like these guys. But again, there comes a level of like, nope, too rich for me. I'm gonna let someone take that undervalued play. Like, so like I was talking with Josh, like, yeah, that's highest ceiling, and he would still have that on the Chiefs. Like Mahomes moves that shit around. They're frustrated in terms of their offensive. Look at how many targets I think every year, every game we see like, oh, 7 guys got targets today, 9 guys got targets today on that Chiefs roster. So you got to take that into place too. Like people just equate like, oh, Chiefs, Hyatt, yay. Like that's not how this works. Like he's not going to get all these targets and get out there. And I think that's where those stuff gets built in. That's where Sky Moore was getting drafted ahead of Chris Olave last year. Like you have to be very careful with that, and you have to look at the value play.
If teams this year do not double cover Travis Kelce with that piss poor receiving core that they have in Kansas City, I don't know when you're gonna double cover Travis Kelce. It makes no sense to me. I don't get it. Who's beating you in that wide receiver room right now?
Sky, Tony, man, come on now.
Sky Moore. I'm still in on Sky Moore. I think with the increased opportunity, I think that's your guy. But that's also a guy that probably wins best out of the slot and does the same stuff as Travis Kelce. So I think that's why you see we want to put a burner on Kansas City to see what that does. And see how that opens up the offense. But Andy Reid's so creative. He'll find ways to get Travis Kelce the ball, even through double and triple and quadruple teams, probably. So,
put 11 guys on him. Travis Kelce's still getting the football.
Honestly.
Yep.
I would rather Sky Moore score 7 touchdowns on me than allow Travis Kelce 2 catches. Like, let the 4th receiver on the depth chart beat you over the best tight end in the NFL. I mean, I don't know if that's just the Bill Belichick way of thinking it, is I'm going to let your shittier guys beat me and I'm going to stop your best guy. But I don't get why teams don't try and do that. Like, make Kadarius Toney beat you, because he hasn't beaten anybody since Florida. Like, that doesn't happen. Do not let their best guy beat you. So if Travis Kelce isn't double covered 15 of the 17 games next year, all NFL defensive coordinators deserve to be fired. All of them. And I say that knowing the Patriots don't play them this year, so Belichick doesn't have to be fired. That's fine. But if you look at Belichick's track record...
That's how you keep Belichick off the chopping block. Is that right,
If you look at Belichick's track record, guess what the fuck he does? He double covers Travis Kelce. And look, oh my God, it works. It's almost like they've beaten them in big games. Jesus. Might want to take a page out of his book. All right. Mid to late round guys. You guys have one of the same guys, so that's good. That's big time. Kevin, you have Raheem Jarrett out of Maryland, Jacob Copeland out of Maryland, and Jaden Reed out of Michigan State. Christian, you also have Jaden Reed. You also have Tank Dell from Houston, Michael Wilson from Stanford. I'll let you guys both talk on Jaden Reed, just because that is a similarity between you two. So, Christian, I'll let you start.
Yeah, probably the right order here too, because Kevin and I actually have a bet about his 2 guys, Raheem Jarrett and Jaden Reed, on who would get drafted earlier. Reed to me was just a lot of the reason he doesn't have a ton of hype right now is that Michigan State offense was pretty atrocious. Peyton Thorne, their quarterback, really struggled to get him the ball, especially this last year. The absence of Jalen Naylor, the probably wide receiver 3 on the Minnesota Vikings right now, definitely impacted what they were able to do. But in terms of what Jaden Reed can do, he's an inside-out type of guy. He's a really good athlete. He's a guy that does get open quite a bit and can, once again, work at all 3 levels of the field. I think if you want to use him on the underneath stuff, I think that he can excel. I think if you want him to beat a guy deep, I think he can do that too. He's not the biggest guy, but once again, you don't need the biggest guys out there. I think Reed's probably going to get a little higher draft capital than people expect. If I had to guess right now, it'd be like late 3rd, early 4th. Had a really great Senior Bowl, and just a guy that I think will start to generate some buzz here in the next few weeks.
Kevin?
Yeah, I like Jaden Reed a lot. Like I like Jaden Reed. Like we are, if you're looking at Jaden Reed, like a lot of people like Tank Dell, and I get that. But like for me, Jaden is that guy. If you're gonna take a shot on like a little guy late, like a guy that like him, and he came in at 187. I think that was the biggest thing for me when he came into the combine at 187. I think that really kind of okay, he's got that physical frame because he always played like his physicality on tape and everything there too. He always played bigger than what he looked like, and it was always like, man, he's kind of got that in him, and he does. Like so, physicality that outweighs it. When you're looking at work after the catchability, I think that's a big one. And I think of one thing that we don't talk about a lot. He can play special teams. Like he can get out there. So like that team's going to like that, especially these late round guys when you're trying to grab them. Like he's going to be able to make a roster from that. I think West Coast scheme would be really great. So depending on where he gets drafted, because I think his ability to create after the catch would do really well there. And he's a good blocker. So if you put him in that area, in that system, and teams in a West Coast system love this kid and say, hey, he's going to block for us as well. Then he can earn targets, and that's the way to get fantasy points. So yeah, I'm a big Jaden Reed guy. I think late he's a good, and he's going pretty late right now in leagues, so like he's a pretty good value.
And just looking at CBS Sports rankings right now, Jaden Reed's actually pretty high up there for the receivers. He's inside their top 10 for position ranking for receivers. He's at 9. They have him higher than Marvin Mims at 12, Cedric Tillman at 15, A.T. Perry at 16. Not sure how much you guys agree with this, but he's higher than Kayshon Boutte, so that's good from what I
think
understand.
about 75% of this wide receiver class should be ahead of Kayshon Boutte at this point.
Well,
my God, those testing numbers were atrocious.
Listen, man. So it's LSU. He'll be fine. He's like Terrace Marshall. Just give him 3 years. It's fine. It's fine. Speaking of Terrace Marshall, probably the wide receiver one on a team that could one of two teams that definitely probably need a receiver the most in the NFL. Panthers and Texans. The Panthers are currently rocking. I had to look up their depth chart because I did not know who was on their team. Terrace Marshall, DJ Chark, Adam Thielen. So a 34-year-old relic, a guy who gets injured, and LSU's own Terrace Marshall. Don't worry, though. Preston Williams is there. Didn't know he had an NFL contract.
I didn't even know he was on the Panthers. Wow, okay.
Shi Smith, the wide receiver 2 for the Panthers last year, is now their wide receiver 6. That gives you any indication to how bad they were last year. And Laviska Shenault. Their number one pass catcher is Hayden Hurst at this point, because that is an atrocious, absolutely atrocious wide receiver room right there. The Texans, their one is Nico Collins, I believe, who everyone is like, oh, Nico Collins is going to have a breakout year. It's the Texans. Pump the brakes. Let's see what happens. The Falcons, Drake London, Kyle Pitts could use a guy in the slot probably. So the Titans, I mean, hey, that A.J. Brown trade's really working out right now. It's really working for them. Full rebuild, absolute full rebuild. The Patriots, Tyquan Thornton's the one, and I hate it, and I don't like it. And we have 2 tight ends again, but they're both white. So is that what Belichick needs at this point? He wants 2 Rob Gronkowskis on the team now. I'm very confused. Get rid of Mac Jones and we're fine. The Chargers, because Keenan Allen's old.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They honestly, after 2023, you could see a situation where the Chargers don't have Keenan Allen or Mike Williams because of salary cap.
Okay, all right, that's fine. But I'm sitting here, I'm like, going into this year, they legitimately could have the best 3 stack of receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, but they have 0 speed.
Mike Williams is fast. Josh Palmer's a dog. Get out of here. Josh Palmer is a dog. All right. The Ravens. Devin Duvernay's the one. Rashad Bateman coming off injury. So that's fun. That's a good time. James Prochet's still there sitting on the fucking bench. Maybe we should play him. The Vikings. Justin Jefferson and the crowd. That is all. They need someone opposite him. The Giants. Their wide receiver 1 is Darren Waller. So really need some help there. The Bills. Gabe Davis is not a good wide receiver too? ? Playoff Gabe, though. Big game Gabe, as Tony Romo likes to call him. Big game Gabe. Idiot. The Chiefs, aforementioned, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, probably not going to cut it this year. The Rams, Cooper Kupp off injury, and Van Jefferson. Allen Robinson's still there?
Allen Robinson is still there. Yeah.
It's amazing that they just haven't just cut him outright at this point. Van Jefferson, they don't really have a true wide receiver 2 at this point unless Allen Robinson, remembers that, he has had better quarterbacks than Mitchell Trubisky and can remember how to run routes and catch footballs. And the Browns, Amari Cooper opposite him.
Well, they did trade for Elijah Moore, but
yes,
by all indications, they're talking about kind of opening up that offense and really letting Deshaun Watson throw it. So I'm curious to see how that plays out if they believe in David Bell and Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Yeah, their 1, 2, 3 would be DPJ at probably 2 or 3 with Elijah Moore and then Amari Cooper at 1. Peoples-Jones seemed to be acclimating to the system decently. I mean,
I thought he played well last year.
He's a straight line, holy shit, he's fast kind of guy. But they do need more of that intermediate guy. And Amari Cooper does a lot of that as well, but I don't think they have a true underneath guy, so that could be something that
they need a guy that can do that when Cooper doesn't play at home. Let's be honest.
We love Amari Cooper on the road. We love Amari Cooper on the road. It's fantastic. All right. Top prospects. Where will they land? Spoiler alert, everybody. Nobody fucking agreed. So this is going to be very fun to decipher. Okay. Jaxon Smith-Njigba. No one said the Bears. That is like the number 1 spot I've seen everyone mocking it to. You know what Kevin, Christian, and Josh said? Fuck you, Joe. He's not going to the Bears. That's what they said. That's what they said for this show. Kevin has him going to the Titans to just rot away with Malik Willis. That's fantastic. Christian has him going to the Seahawks. That would be a ridiculous wide receiver room at that point. Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. You don't believe in Marquise Goodwin, though? Come on now.
No.
Dog.
All right.
Can you explain
the deadpan response? I love it.
Marquise Goodwin. Josh, you have him going to the Texans. I would say 2 very wide receiver needy teams in the current state. The Seahawks, not so much. They have 2 pretty damn good ones. I'm gonna pick one person. Kevin, I'm gonna go. Why do you? Okay. Do you like him on the Titans, or do you just think in your heart of hearts this is where he ends up?
I mean, I don't think it necessarily destroys his value, but it definitely hurts it. So when I wrote my mock, I think they need wide receiver. They need a dude and Treylon Burks has always been a whatever to me. I have no shares because I thought he was overvalued last year. And so they need a guy like JSN to come in there, and they need talent. That team needs so much talent, but they're sitting at such a shitty spot at 11. If those quarterbacks go off the board and they really don't want to move up to go grab a guy, if the tackles go off the board, so if Paris Johnson and those guys aren't there either, they're going to be sitting at 11. What do we do? And I think in my last mock that I did for Fantasy Pros, we were talking about it. I gave them JSN, and hey, he's there. He's the wide receiver 1. He should earn targets there. I think Tannehill is going to be the guy for 1 more year. I don't think Malik's in play because then I had him drafting Hendon Hooker in the 2nd. And so if they can get someone like that, then you're looking at JSN being that guy. And I do think JSN would fit well in that system because I think he can play in the slot. I think he'd be really good into it. He can earn those targets, heavy running game. And I do think that, but it does cap his ceiling a little bit until they get a better quarterback. I think that's the key. But Tennessee's in a weird flux, but I think they could do this. I've seen it mocks plenty of times. They need talent in that wide receiver room.
Yeah. Very, very, very bad.
I think they end up going offensive tackle personally. I just think moving on from Taylor Lewan. And I mean, we've talked about this really throughout this show that, some of the top guys in this class will probably go early, but then that's going to push a lot of everybody else down. If they truly believe in Treylon Burks as the one, they might be looking more at a compliment than an elite wide receiver. So, and I think that's where you maybe end up with a Josh Downs in the 2nd round going to Tennessee after taking the tackle early.
So I take back what I said earlier about the Panthers. The Titans wide receiver room makes the Panthers look like the fucking 90s 49ers. This is bad. Treylon Burks, Nick Westbrook-Akine, Kyle Phillips? ? Reggie Robertson Jr., Mason Kinsey, sounds like the yodeling kid in Walmart. And right, is that kid is Mason Ramsey? Yeah, that's fucking close. Racey McMath, a combined like 7 NFL receptions between these 6 guys. It is not good. Chigoziem Okonkwo though, that man. It sucks no one's gonna be able to throw him the football, but Chigoziem Okonkwo for the win. Okay, Jordan Addison, Kevin, Buffalo. Please God, no, we don't need another receiver to cover in New England. Christian, you have the Steelers reuniting with the man, the myth, the legend, Kenny Pickles. And Josh, you have the Chargers. So I think the Chargers more of a long-term play. Obviously not this year, but it would be year 2 and maybe year 3 because Keenan Allen is up there in age. Christian, talk about the reuniting with his former college quarterback in what seems to be a fairly crowded receiver room with Deontay Johnson and George Pickens at this point, at least.
Yeah, so I think the main thing is their third wide receiver right now is Calvin Austin. And so, yeah, right. And they've got, Anthony Miller still on the team. Gunnar Olszewski, I think, is a guy that's going to get snaps right now, which is not good. On the other side of things, too, the Deontay Johnson contract is weird in that they could very much so look to get out of that.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that because I honestly think Deontay Johnson will get traded on draft day. I really do.
I've been,
especially if they pull the trigger and draft Jordan Addison or another wide receiver.
Josh wants it so badly, you have no idea.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I want him out of Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I do too, because I think he's very talented, but I also think he probably isn't happy with the contract that they gave him, but he knew that he was in a weird situation in that he didn't have much leverage. So I think he took that shorter term deal. But I also think that him and Pickett just did not click very well last year. Granted, it's tough to click with Pickett because he's not very good. Addison, though, we know that that's going to click. And I think the Addison stock right now could lend itself to, they have that 32nd overall pick with the Dolphins forfeiting. They could use that to maybe come up, get in front of some of these teams that might want him and have 2 first-round picks when all is said and done. But I think if you get that dynamic duo between Pickett and Addison back together, you're looking at probably a competitive Steelers team, even though I think they're still kind of down right now.
If the Steelers draft a receiver, I take them as good because they have rarely ever missed at that position in recent years when they've been drafting them in at least the top 3 rounds. But Martavis Bryant before he did drugs, Antonio Brown, Mike Wallace, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens looks pretty fucking good at the sport. So they don't miss. So if he goes there, I do think also the reuniting with Kenny Pickett will also just make it an even easier transition to the NFL for him too.
And Deontay Johnson has a really tradable contract. I mean, for some of these top wide receivers, $18 million that Johnson's getting per year, that pales in comparison.
His cap hit over the next 2 years is 16.3 this year, 15.8 the following year. For a top tier receiver, that's pretty good.
Pennies.
Yeah, that's pretty good. His dead cap this year is 20 million. So that's, there's no like straight outright cut that's going to happen. It's still cheaper to keep him there. But if he does stay there this year, I mean, he could just be like a cut candidate if they can't get anything for him because it's only 6 million dead cap compared to 16 cap hit. So regardless, could be a longer term play if Addison goes there as well. Okay. Quentin Johnson. This was the only one we agreed with, folks. Everyone said he feels like a Raven. So he feels like a 27 catch, 360 yards, and maybe a touchdown kind of guy. So
and 8 games played.
Is there more to break down? Because that like hit the nail on the head right there.
Yeah, I think that's pretty it. Fantastic.
Okay. But don't forget, Pro Bowl quarterback Tyler Huntley will be throwing him the football. So don't forget about that. He will have a Pro Bowl quarterback throwing him the football. It's not the one you're thinking. It's the one who had 5 interceptions to 4 touchdowns when he was voted into the Pro Bowl. So yeah. Imagine people look back on the NFL Pro Bowl after they get rid of it because it's a fucking joke, and they see Derek Carr, Trevor Lawrence, and Tyler Huntley were the quarterbacks for the AFC that year. Do they think that the NFL just gave up like at that point? That's a joke.
I can't wait for analytics Twitter then to doesn't look at film and just see all these Pro Bowl nods and say Tyler Huntley GOAT.
I'm waiting for it. Zay Flowers, Kevin, Charges, Christian, Patriots. A lot of people are mocking him to the Patriots. And, if they do, that's the end of his career. Because Bill Belichick sees first-round wide receivers as well as Helen Keller saw throughout her entire life. Non-existent. So whoever the Patriots draft as a wide receiver, they're done. They suck. Terrible. They need to only get undrafted free agents or 7th-round picks. Those are the only way that their receivers ever work. Josh, Minnesota. Kevin, the Chargers is interesting because Keenan Allen's old. Let's say they keep Mike Williams somehow. Keenan Allen's getting up there in age. We talk about Zay Flowers being the underneath guy. Keenan Allen can literally do everything under the sun. I don't think it sounds like Zay Flowers can do what Keenan Allen can do, but at least as an underneath guy, is that why you like Zay Flowers going there? Why'd you put him there?
Yeah, I mean, I think he could get up there. I think it just depends on how the board falls ahead of him. But like when you're looking at it, like I love him in Kellen Moore's system. As much as I don't like Kellen Moore as a Dallas fan, I don't think it was all Kellen Moore's fault. I think it was fat Mike McCarthy's fault. But when you're looking at like, I can't stand that dude. But like I think that I think the cool thing is with Flowers, like we kind of mentioned earlier, like yeah, he has those missed tackles. He had 25 forced missed tackles on catches last season, so he can do that in the open field. So the underneath route stuff is good, but I do think he can play on the outside and the inside too. So they can be versatile with him and move him around with Kellen Moore and Mike Williams. And then if you want to put Josh Palmer in there, like they need that. Like and when you're looking at their offense last year, they only attempted 61 throws at least 20 yards downfield last season. So they weren't throwing the ball downfield last season. They didn't have the weapons of talent there. I think Flowers fits that, and it gives them that kind of weapon to use.
Any other thoughts on him going to the LA? I mean, I like it.
I just wonder, I think the Chargers definitely are one of those teams that need wide receiver, but how do they feel about Josh Palmer, who stepped up really well last year? Because if they like him, Keenan is getting old, but then maybe they view themselves as having 2 good wide receivers. Maybe we're in that like complementary piece type of deal. And because that's a really, really crowded room, at least for 2023. And with the value of like looking at 5 years of the contract, if you waste one for a wide receiver, I don't think it's the same as like sitting a quarterback for a year. So that's why I just wonder what that looks like. And I mean, you're kind of looking at Zay Flowers or whoever ends up going there as being not really fantasy relevant for a year, I think, unless they were to move on from one of Allen and Mike Williams in the process, like via trade. So that's the only thing I would question here.
Yeah, that's fair. Jalin Hyatt, Kevin, I'm going to the Chiefs. Arguably the dream spot for probably most people, seeing the speed. Christian, have him going to the Chargers, sitting. Josh, you have him going to the Giants. Now, as the person who, has insider trading information in this, what have you heard from Jalin Hyatt's agent, aka Mom, about his draft prospects and teams looking at him?
What I do know is that he's had about 57 meetings with the Giants throughout this draft process. And yes, the number itself is being facetious, but a lot of meetings with the Giants, which really kind of ticked a bell with me simply because when you look at Hyatt's, profile from college, he played a lot in the slot. We know that the Giants have been like loading up on slot receivers, it feels like, of late. Do they see him as somebody that can transition on the outside, or is he really that dream prospect that they've been waiting for to kind of fill this slot role? So that's going to be very interesting, but I think he brings a lot to the table and he can fit with this Giants team simply because, making this deal for Waller, if he becomes that sort of like, dominant outside, like wide receiver 1 that they can just kind of, split out and then work the middle with the wide receivers, guys like the Wan'Dale Robinson, if they pull the trigger on Hyatt. But they need to be able to stretch the field. You bring in somebody like Jalin Hyatt, they can do that. They have a dominant run game. They still have Saquon Barkley there on the franchise tag this year. I think there's a lot of things that make sense there. But even if they don't pull the trigger at 25, I think that we're starting, and Christian, you kind of brought this up, that some of these, top wide receiver prospects might get pushed a little bit further into the second round. The Giants could be in a position, maybe they trade back into that early second, and that's when they pull the trigger on Hyatt. They also have, I think, a later second round pick where maybe they could move into the mid to early second if they want to trade up to get him. But I think the Giants make a lot of sense in just not from what I've heard, but also from an on paper perspective as well.
I just want to bring up the Chargers, not because Christian mentioned they were here, but we talked a lot about the Chargers. And I looked at the cap hit for Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen will be 23. I'm sorry, 23. He's 32 this year. He will be 33. I had the numbers backwards in my fucking head. He'll be 32 in 2024. Mike Williams will be 30 in 2024. Their cap hits, respectively, Keenan Allen 34.7, Mike Williams 32.4. You pretty much looking at virtually the same cap hit. Their dead cap is within $1 million of each other. Pretty much the same thing. If you are the GM of the Chargers, I'll go around the room. Who are you cutting to save money? Keenan Allen or Mike Williams, Christian?
I mean, I think you can make a very good case to cut Mike Williams, but he did receive the contract later. So maybe you're hoping, for that 2021 season again, and knowing that you have a few extra legs. But with all those injuries, it's one of two things, right? You think that the injuries have impacted him and it's going to shorten his career, or you think the injuries will lengthen his career because he's not taking as many snaps on the field. That was a long way to say I'd cut Mike Williams and keep Keenan Allen until he retires.
Kevin.
I would cut. I think it's Keenan because I don't know if he could stay healthy. I know Mike Williams can't either. I think the age thing's a real factor, and I think they move on and try to find somebody else.
Josh.
Yeah, I think it's Keenan too. Age obviously plays into it, but I think replicating a high target slot receiver is a little easier than replicating somebody that can dominate on the outside 50-50 balls and be a large target in the end zone.
And I brought this up because I would also cut Mike Williams because I am Keenan Allen's number 1B fan with Ryan Weiss being 1A. So we are 1-1 right there. I find it interesting because their numbers are virtually the same. In both arguments are 100% valid, where you probably can't replicate a 6'4" guy who runs ridiculously fast and could be one of the best jump ball guys in the NFL, but runs on wine glasses and can't stay healthy. On the same side, though, Keenan Allen also can't stay healthy. He's 2 years older.
2.5 months to come back from a hamstring.
Yeah, but
That's also a problem.
But Tyrod Taylor got stabbed by the same training staff. So, how good is their training staff is my question. But no, you're right. Is Keenan Allen took his time coming back. So he also has injury concerns, but when on the field, Keenan Allen is absurdly productive. So it's just very interesting. Just wanted to see both sides because both sides are valid. I think it's going to be interesting come decision time for them. If they do that, I'm hoping they cut Keenan Allen so that way these last 3 years of people saying the Patriots are going to trade for Keenan Allen, he can finally come to the Patriots and Bill Belichick can resurrect his career for 2 seasons and we'll be fine. So that's what I want. Last one, Josh Downs. We have 2 agreements. The Panthers, Kevin and Josh. So at number 1 overall, the Carolina Panthers will select Josh Downs out of the University of North Carolina. They will forego C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young, and we'll draft Josh Downs. Christian, you have him going to the Packers, which is just asinine. They don't draft receivers.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's fair.
No.
Yep. I don't have a rebuttal there.
That's fair. I'll say because Panthers is actually this is the first time the Panthers were mentioned of the top prospects on this list.
They have to draft a wide receiver at some point this draft.
They got to draft
They
someone.
really do. I will say the one thing about Josh Downs that's really kind of surprised me throughout this whole cycle, and I know some people started to make a big deal out of it, was early on, he didn't have a single top 30 visit scheduled. And for a wide receiver that has been talked about as one of the top like 5-6 guys in this class, I felt like that was very strange. And then some reports started coming out that so many people view him as such a clean prospect that they don't really need to get to know him to the point where, oh, we got to make sure that, you know, this guy fits with our city and what we do as a team and scheme, et cetera, et cetera. Kevin, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts, like why you think the Panthers. I was kind of tying it into A, need, and B, he's the kid that kind of is around that area because he played at UNC. Similar thought process, or?
I just think they need to upgrade their receiver room in that second round. And if he's sitting there, I think they could go do it. Like, I think that's where it's at. Like, very simple. Like, hey, we're sitting there. We're going to upgrade our receiver room, kind of get that guy. And I think they're around, so they've probably seen this kid a little bit more. You know, the regional scouts and stuff like that. Like, that plays a role. Like, they've seen him. I don't know, like, the top 30 thing. I know Christian had, like, a take on that too. But, like, I think it might be just teams not wanting to tip their hand either. Like, hey, we really like this kid, but he's going in that second round maybe. And like, hey, we don't need necessarily a top 30 visit here. We kind of like him where he's at on our board. And if we move up, that's fine. But I do think the Panthers fit. Like, I think they got to build a little bit. I think they did an okay job. Like, I'm a little bit higher on the weapons that they have, but they need to do like Downs to come in to be that kind of that the calming factor. And the thing with Downs too, that we didn't really necessarily mention, I think he could play on the inside and out. He played on the out when he was a junior, a sophomore, when he had 1,300 yards with Hal. Like, he can be an outside guy too. He's versatile, can use that. And like Joe pointed out, like that receiving room, they're going to get injured. Like those guys, Chark and Thielen, have not been able to stay healthy. With Downs, you can use them in the slot on the outside and like gives your receiver a go-to weapon. And he's elevated guys like Sam Howell, like Drake May. He looked good. Like, he can elevate that wide receiver. He gives them that weapon that they need and gives them kind of a go-to guy. I think all those things fit in that second round. If he's there, I would be hard pressed for them probably not to take him unless somebody else on their board fell.
Last thing I know Josh wanted to bring up before we close here. He wanted to bring up someone named Mingo. The only Mingo I know is Barkevius, and he's terrible. So, Josh,
so Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss. I know he's starting to get some draft buzz, and the big comp that I've seen thrown around, which kind of I get but don't get. Everybody seems to be looking for the next Deebo Samuel, and the guy is 6'2", 220. He's got like 3 inches, I think, on Deebo, but they're around the same size and they run very well. Christian, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on Mingo, how he kind of can transition his game into the NFL, and potentially what round do you think he would fit in?
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of the buzz as well. I think he's a good wide receiver. I'm a little nervous that we're going to vault him up in a way. In our rookie guide at Football Guys, we comped him to Bryan Edwards. And I don't know if you guys remember the discussion about Bryan Edwards around this time that year.
Yes.
But it's starting to look pretty similar in terms of what their skill sets are as well. I think Jonathan Mingo does a lot of things that NFL teams are going to like, and I fully expect that day 2 capital at this point. Really great athlete, guy that can block, guy that has pretty versatile skill set. I question his hands, and I question, why it's taken until a month before the draft for this to be a thing. In terms of where you can get him in Dynasty and in rookie drafts and things like that, right now he's basically free. So I understand, investing in him. But if he starts to creep up into the second, third, early fourth even, I think I'm pretty out on Jonathan Mingo this year.
Kevin.
Yeah, I'm in this weird spot where I'm like, I really have no take on Mingo because it's one of those, he's fine. I would have loved him as a tight end, to be honest. I think he fits really well there. He's versatile. If he's a little bit taller, I think he'd really do well there because he has that athleticism and that size package that you really like. And he really is explosive after the catch. Just not a ton of production, right? And I think that he's not really very refined as a receiver. That's why I think the Edwards comp fits pretty well. Athlete. not necessarily a receiver. Like, that's kind of how I feel about Mingo overall. But it's based on value again. But if you get him in that 4th round, you take the upside shot on like the athleticism there. I think that's where it's at. But that, that lack of refinement from route running, that's going to require some time for him to kind of get in there. Injuries have definitely occurred with him as well because of that big fill, and it's going to take some time to develop. So the later you get, the happier I feel with Mingo. Like, the later you can draft him, you're like, hey, just a taxi guy, I'm gonna stash him anyway. But I'm not reaching for him. Like, I've seen him go pretty high and some recently, because you know how it gets. Like, people start talking about him and it goes there. But that's not my play. Not in the early 3rd. I'm not doing that. I think he's got some refinement skills that he's got to develop. Now, if he does that, he could be that shot. But I think Edwards is the perfect comp for him.
Sounds a lot like Laviska Shenault too. Just in, the lack of refinement and kind of the ability as a ball carrier too, because I know that a lot of people have pointed that out with Mingo's game, and that was something that Colorado used a lot with Laviska.
Yeah.
So
for the people who have no idea who this person is and only look at numbers from the combine like myself, here's your numbers. His athleticism score according to the NFL Combine is 84, which ranked 8th amongst receiver. His production score was 66, which ranked 22nd amongst receivers. So that all checks out. His hands are pretty big. They're 10 and almost 10 and a quarter. Oh, I'm sorry, 10 and a half. And his athleticism is ridiculous. 39 and a half inch vert, 4.46 40, 1.54 split. So I'm hearing Brian Edwards NFL comparisons, but you know what Lance Zierlein is seeing? Anquan Bolden. Silence falls across the room as Brian Edwards and Anquan Bolden have never been mentioned in the same sentence until today. Until today. Yeah, they have him as Anquan Bolden. I mean, I don't know a lot about this guy. I'm just going to take a wild guess. He's not Anquan Bolden. Just a wild guess that he's not Anquan Bolden. Because he was pretty fucking good. He was pretty good, to say the least.
Yeah.
So if there's this much discrepancy, I don't think he's Anquan Bolden, because Anquan Bolden was pretty good. All right, gentlemen, great show. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, boys. Appreciate you.
I learned a lot.
Fun.
I hope everyone else learned a lot, because I knew the top 3 guys. I didn't even know that there was a dude from SMU coming out, and now he's probably going to be like my 4th or 5th round pick in Dynasty if he falls that far. So that's great. I'm excited for it. This is where I learned all the stuff from my Dynasty drafts, and this is fantastic. Next week,
Joe's helmet scouting season.
I am true. I honestly don't give a shit about anyone until I see where your landing spots are, and I watch like 2 seconds of tape on you that they showed during when you get drafted. That's my scouting for my Dynasty teams. And you know what? Hey, I didn't know a lick of shit about George Pickens, but the Steelers drafted him, so I'm like, oh, he must be fucking good. So I took him, and now we're chilling. We're good. We're good. We're fine. Next week, we're back live. We're joined by the 3rd leg of the Devy Royale squad. Why do we keep inviting them? Like, why do we keep
because they're really fucking smart. That's
do we have
why.
A contract? Are they holding a gun to your head? Why do we keep inviting them? Jeff Bell is coming back, right? This is his 2nd time on the show, I think?
Jeff, I think he was on with us a couple of years ago. He did one of our Look Inside preview shows. So it was good to get him to talk some prospects.
Heck yeah.
He does really well. So
yeah. Ryan will be back. I am gone. Thank God. Because you know what we're talking about? Fucking tight ends. Oh,
a good tight end class, though, Joe. A good tight end class.
It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter.
I know none of these guys are be good for 4 years anyway, so it's like
you
all right,
understand that one of these tight ends could get 100 targets this year and still be 150 points behind Travis Kelce. It doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't matter. I'm so happy. Like, all right, listen, I love all you guys watching the show. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad I'm missing this show. You have no idea. Timed it fucking perfectly. This is great. I was gonna miss this show too. We have to spend
so much time hyping up any tight end show because Joe just like
it's so
shits
bad
the bed and kills our viewership before it even starts.
I was gonna miss I was gonna miss this show too, but I'm so happy we got to pre-record because wide receivers are fun. I saw a mock where the Patriots are gonna draft the tight end at 14. And I almost punched my computer monitor because that's stupid. That's just dumb. We're running a 3 tight end set. That's stupid. Ugh. Mock it like it's hot. Mondays at 11. That's a fun show. You should watch
is.
that one. You should watch that
We've
one.
got
That
a
one's
couple
fun.
Tuesday shows too.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
And you know what's
By the
not
time
on there,
this
though?
airs, we'll have Her Story in the Making with Britt Flynn and Jen Polvote, and then the episode of Who's Your Caddy?
Who's Your Caddy? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's
Kelly
not
and
on
Adam.
my outro sheet though to read? Who's Your Caddy or Her Story in the Making. So
That's why I did it.
yeah, that's very, very, very mean. But the Masters, a tree almost fell on someone's head. So that's
Right out of
going.
Happy Gilmore, I'm telling you.
They had a delay. CBS coverage of the sport is terrible. So go Masters. Woo, can't even tell you who's in first right now. Great sport. Fun to play. Arguably the worst sport to watch. Second next to pickleball when it starts getting more popular. So Christian, Kevin, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you guys. Josh,
Appreciate you guys.
kick rocks. You can follow Club Fantasy on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Club Fantasy FFL. The URL is clubfantasyfl.com. Josh is at the One Hudsonian. Kevin is at Dubois_22. He definitely doesn't say it like that. Christian is at C Williams NFL. You don't have to follow me. It's totally fine. Just follow Club Fantasy. Always remember, defense wins championships. Offense wins fantasy football. We will see you next week.